morning, I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, progress and setbacks in the fight against COVID. And the situation all depends on where you live. In much of the U.S., new cases and hospitalizations are still on the rise, with experts warning a peak won't come for weeks. But for the states hit first by the winter wave, some signs of relief as infection rates begin to drop. We have team coverage mapping out the latest and what it could mean for the weeks ahead. Plus, we'll check in with a doctor ready to answer your questions. Battle on the Hill, the future of American democracy taking center stage at the Capitol. Today, Senate lawmakers set to debate two bills aimed at protecting voter rights. The legislation backed by President Biden, but doomed without the support of two members of his own party. This one day after an impassioned call to action by the family of Martin Luther King Jr.
If you can deliver an infrastructure bill for bridges, you can deliver voting rights for Americans. If you do not, there's no bridge in this nation that can hold the weight of that failure.
More on their message ahead of today's historic debate. In the dark, parts of the Northeast digging out from that massive winter storm. This morning, thousands of people without power, with temperatures still below freezing in some parts of the country. We'll take you to the areas hardest hit. And rescue mission, an urgent attempt to save the ocean's gentle giant from climate change. Why manatees are struggling to survive in warmer waters and the efforts now to nurse them back to health. That, of course, as we continue to focus on climate change and bring you these different types of stories showing all different types of impacts.
Yeah, and Carrie Sanders will bring us that one a little later.
Yes, well, all right, we begin though with the latest on the pandemic. This morning, NBC News has confirmed there have now been more than 66 million COVID cases in the U.S.
Right now, 130,000 Americans are hospitalized with COVID, and cases are still rising in nearly every state. Despite that, there are some signs of progress in regions first hit hard by Omicron. In states like New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, cases appear to have peaked, and here in New York City, they've dropped off nearly 47% from earlier this month. But other parts of the country are still getting slammed. According to an NBC News tally, California has now surpassed 7 million COVID-19 cases since the start of the pandemic, becoming the first state to hit that mark. We have team coverage to help us break down and understand the latest on the pandemic. Joining us now is NBC News medical reporter Erica Edwards. Dr. Bob Lahida will join us in a moment. Erica, we'll start with you, and we're going to start with schools. We've been talking about how fast the Omicron variant has spread. That's made it hard for some schools to keep their classrooms staffed. What's the impact you're seeing, and how are school districts handling this surge?
Yeah, hey, Joe, good morning. You know, the impact coast to coast has been enormous. Schools in Washington State, Kansas, Missouri, even New York have had to cancel classes either because of high community transmission of COVID-19 or because so many teachers and other staff have called out sick. Now, for those schools, districts that have been able to remain open, districts are calling on, National Guardsmen, school board members, even parent volunteers to step in as either substitute teachers, bus drivers, even custodial and cafeteria staff. The North Kansas City School District had 300 teachers out sick last Friday. We talked with the school district's superintendent about how they also got creative. Here's what he had to say.
We're having a pretty difficult time in covering all of our classes. We had to really lean on our staff, like our paraprofessionals, our librarians, our reading teachers, our central office staff, to go fill those additional vacancies so that we can continue to have school.
Some school districts have actually extended the MLK holiday weekend into this week to help shore up some of those absences.
So, Eric, as we mentioned, we're seeing a plateau in some of those states that were first to report Omicron cases. It strikes me these areas are in the Northeast where vaccination rates are high. So do health experts think we're going to see this in other parts of the country? And if so, what's the timeline looking like this for Omicron?
Sure. So other countries who have gone through an Omicron surge have generally seen a really steep rise in cases and then a really steep fall in cases. Now, here in the U.S., as you mentioned, it appears that cases in parts of the Northeast, even in Florida, have begun to plateau. But because cases are rising in so many other parts of the country, experts say it's still going to be a few weeks before we could possibly see any kind of national plateau.
And looking forward, some health experts are suggesting Omicron's rapid spread will help us reach the endemic stage. So remind us, what is that, the endemic stage, and what are you hearing from health experts about it?
Yeah, that's a hope that COVID-19 is somehow evolving into something that, even though it's around us all the time, it's not causing widespread disruption as it has over the past few years. Dr. Anthony Fauci addressed the issue yesterday during a World Economic Forum event. Here's what he had to say.
When you talk about whether or not Omicron, because it's a highly transmissible, but apparently not as pathogenic, for example, as Delta, I would hope that that's the case, but that would only be the case if we don't get another variant that eludes the immune response to the prior variant. It is an open question as to whether or not Omicron is going to be the live virus vaccination that everyone is hoping for.
Joe, right now, more than 98% of COVID-19 cases here in the U.S. are the Omicron variant. Back to you.
Erica Edwards kicking us off this hour. Erica, thank you.
Now let's bring in Dr. Bob Lahida. He's a professor at the Hackensack Meridian Medical School and the director of autoimmune and rheumatic diseases at St. Joseph Health, also the author of his new book, Immunity Strong. Dr. Lahida, great to have you with us. So let's start with your response right there to what we just heard from Dr. Fauci about whether Omicron will bring an end to the pandemic. Is this an endemic? What's your take?
It's interesting that he used the term, Savannah, live vaccine. That's the way we think of this Omicron variant because it has infected so many people, 802,000 cases a day right now. So, yes, perhaps this is the end. I'm hoping. But we always have the possibility that there are going to be new variants developing. And so he's hedging his bets and saying right now it's too early to tell.
All right, Dr. Lahida, now I want to ask you about some vaccine news. So Moderna's CEO says they're working on a single shot booster that would be a combo, actually, of a COVID-19 booster shot and a flu shot. So if that's approved, what do you think about that? Is that safe? I know some people are hesitant to combine those two. Some people are hesitant to get the COVID vaccine at all. What do you think about this? Do you think people would take to it? And what kind of an impact could it have if it were to roll out?
It would really be an amazing development simply because the messenger RNA technology will be used now for influenza. And in addition, Moderna is talking about putting in messenger RNA for other respiratory viruses like respiratory syncytial virus, which nobody knows about, but is a major cause of disability and cold going forward, particularly in the wintertime. So this combo vaccine is extremely safe. I tell all my patients, please get your flu shots. Most of them do not. Many do, and they get them either at the same time as the booster or the second shot, or they don't get it at all, which is not good in the winter months. So this is a major advance, and it's extremely safe, Savannah.
Now, we've got a question for a viewer from you, Dr. Bob. We've been doing this where we've been asking our viewers to send in questions since we get to talk to experts like you every day. So we have Troy who's saying, I had shot number 1 and number 2. How long should I wait before I get the booster shot? I have not tested positive for COVID-19. Is there a need to wait 6 months? So I think here, maybe especially with Omicron spreading, having not had the virus yet, what do you think about that 6 months period?
No need to wait for the 6 months. He can get it at 5 months, but the CDC is recommending no sooner than 5 months. With regard to other vaccines like the J&J, the booster could be given like 2 to 3 months after that injection, but 5 months after the Moderna or Pfizer vaccine, the last shot.
All right, Dr. Bob Lahida, thank you for that. I'm sure Troy is thankful as well. It's good to see you. Now, if you have a question for one of our doctors, let us know. Our doctors are ready to answer them for you. You can email us. There it is on your screen, Morning News Now at NBCUNI.com with your questions. And you can let us know if you want to stay anonymous. Ask us anything.
On Capitol Hill, the Senate is preparing to debate 2 key voting rights bills. It's legislation that's critical to President Biden's legislative agenda this year with the midterms approaching. Right now, the future is unclear for the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Both bills were passed by the House yesterday. But in the Senate, Democrats Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema have already said they will not support changing the filibuster rules so Democrats can pass the bills with a simple majority. And without that change, the bills just don't have enough votes to get through the Senate. This debate comes just one day after the country honored the memory of Martin Luther King Jr. His children led a march through Washington demanding that Congress pass the 2 bills. Among the speakers, his son, Martin Luther King III.
Mr. President, Senator Manchin, Senator Sinema, members of the Senate, pass the Freedom to Vote John R. Lewis Act now. If you can deliver an infrastructure bill for bridges, you can deliver voting rights for Americans. If you do not, there's no bridge in this nation that can hold the weight of that failure.
Let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell and NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memley to help us preview this debate and what's at stake. So, Leanne, we'll start with you in the standoff in the Democratic Party. First of all, any indication Senators Manchin and Sinema, and it'd have to be both, have changed their minds at the last minute? And if not, then why are Democrats forcing this showdown?
Hey, Joe. Well, there's no indication. Senators Manchin and Senator Sinema have been extremely clear, not only in their most recent statements last week, but in the previous weeks and previous months as well, that they will not get rid of the 60-vote threshold to pass legislation in the Senate in order to pass this voting rights legislation, despite attempts by their colleagues to try to convince them, despite attempts by Martin Luther King III, who I have seen in the hallways of Capitol Hill multiple times over the past few weeks, talking to senators, trying to convince them to do it. So ultimately, this is moving forward with this party divided. It's rare that a Senate majority leader will show divisions among their party, but this is the choice Senator Schumer has to make. He's getting a lot of pressure from progressive groups, from civil rights groups, and he's promised that he would do this. And so it looks like my sources say that he's going to move forward, even if that shows a party divided and that draws the attention on a divided party, and not that Republicans are opposed to this, Joe.
So, Mike, no one has more influence than the president. Is President Biden doing anything now behind the scenes to try and rally his party ahead of this?
Well, Joe, if the question is about what he's doing behind the scenes, the answer is, frankly, not that much. We saw the president return to Washington last night after the long weekend in Wilmington, Delaware. He spent a part of the weekend with his chief of staff planning ahead, looking ahead to his State of the Union address coming up in March. We haven't really seen any indication from the White House of further conversations between the president, Senator Manchin, Senator Sinema, since those three spoke at the White House on Thursday night. The readout from the White House then was that the conversation was respectful and cordial, which is really diplomatic speak for difficult, and no one was really moved by the conversation. So what we saw yesterday publicly was both the president and the vice president using the Martin Luther King holiday to really keep up the urgency on this. Vice President Harris telling reporters that she was not going to absolve any of the 100 senators, trying to broaden the focus to include the Republicans who oppose these voting reform changes. And the president really calling this a moment of choosing. This is now about public pressure campaign that Democrats want to keep up through the midterm elections to try to rally their base.
So, Leanne, despite what the vice president thinks Republicans are going to see this as a win, what are you expecting to see and hear from the GOP during this debate today?
Yeah, we might see some Republican senators come to the floor and debate this, but also we might not. They know that they are united in their opposition against this legislation. We know that this is going to be another difficult week for Democrats, because the attention will be on them and their inability to pass this legislation. And so while Republicans have, especially Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, has put a lot of effort in making this very difficult for Democrats by continuing to pressure Senators Manchin and Sinema to stay on the side of the filibuster, he and Republicans know that this is going to be much more difficult for Democrats, while Republicans are very confident that their base and their supporters are supporting their effort to completely oppose this, Joe.
So, Mike, we're just days away from the start of President Biden's second year in office. These two bills are at the top of his agenda. Just a moment ago, we saw the map that shows all the states that have passed their voting changes. So if he does not pass federal voting rights legislation during his term, what does that mean for the president moving forward?
Well, we can expect to hear the president and other White House officials try to keep the pressure up on the states where some of these voting laws are being passed specifically. But we're also going to see the White House really try to turn the page. They're going to move on to executive orders that we expect the president to be issuing on criminal justice reform, another stalled priority. And we have some new reporting today as well, my colleagues Carol Lee, Kristen Welker, and myself, about the attempt by the White House to now turn in year two towards the American people and less towards lawmakers in Congress. The White House really feels that the president has spent and been bogged down too much with the sausage making here in Washington. And as we head into a campaign year, they want to spend more time talking directly to the American people. It's sort of a typical pivot that we hear at this point, especially when a president has his agenda stalled. But it's something that the White House is really beginning to sketch out behind the scenes, Joe.
Mike Memoli, Leanne Caldwell, thank you so much for both your reporting. Appreciate it.
Now, Americans across the Northeast are digging out this morning after that massive winter storm pummeled the region with snow, ice, and heavy winds. Tens of thousands remain without power, and roads are dangerous in many areas as the effects of the storm are still being felt up and down the East Coast. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa joins us now from Pittsburgh. Hi, Emily. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Well, schools in Buffalo and here in Pittsburgh have been closed for the day, and you can see why. Some roads still slick with ice and snow. Cities up and down the East Coast this morning are recovering from the year's first major winter wallop, and experts say it won't be the last. This morning, more fallout after a massive winter storm pummeled the majority of the country. Shovels and snowplows put to work as many head back to work. But the roadways proving difficult for even emergency crews to handle.
This is a major recovery. When you've got trucks hanging over the highway.
Driving conditions up and down the coast, treacherous. Crashes and spinouts piling up on roadways. In North Carolina, the storm taking a deadly turn. 2 killed after a car veered off the interstate. And injuries in Virginia, where State Patrol responded to 1,000 crashes and disabled cars on Sunday alone. More mayhem anticipated today. After temperatures plummeted overnight, officials are again warning of icy roads. The holiday weekend, a travel headache. At the airport in Buffalo, a record-breaking 16 inches, almost doubling the previous record. Across the country Monday, more than 5,000 flights were canceled or delayed.
So it has been crazy, really bad.
As millions are still digging out after snow, freezing rain, and high-powered winds caused chaos from Florida to New England. Dangerous wind gusts ripping off the roof of a nursing home in Maine, fueling monstrous waves in Massachusetts and causing coastal flooding in Connecticut, while 13 states logged double-digit snowfall totals. The winter weather beatdown dumping at least 20 inches in parts of Ohio, New York, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, where heavy snow is being blamed for collapsing a college dorm's roof. The cold weather wallop hanging on in what is looking to be a long winter. And this morning, we're thankfully seeing some relief from the wind and snowfall, but for some areas, that won't be for too long. Forecasters warn a deep freeze could be returning to the East Coast later this week. Guys, talk about a 1-2 punch.
Yeah, really. Ooh, and Emily, thank you for being out there for us. Stay warm.
And let's get a check on your morning news now weather.
With NBC News meteorologist Michelle Grossman. She joins us now with the latest on that bitter cold hitting the Northeast. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, guys. Yeah, it is cold this morning. We also have winds in place, so it's feeling colder than it is, but much quieter compared to yesterday before we see another storm system move in. But right now we're looking at Northeast radar. Buffalo saw 17 inches of snow in one day. That broke a record for the month of January. And they're seeing some lake effect snow this morning, but it's going to be on the lighter side, not expecting huge accumulations there. We're going to see some snow in the upper Great Lakes. We could see over a foot in some spots. Otherwise, we are relatively quiet in terms of any precipitation today in the Northeast. It's all about the cold air in place, and it's windy, so we're seeing winds gusting over 25 miles per hour at times. Montauk 32 mile per hour, and then you combine that with the cold air, and it's making it feel really frigid out there. We're also looking at the potential for some icy spots this morning, so as you head out, please be careful. 18 degrees right now in Burlington. It feels like 5 above freezing in Baltimore, but it feels like 28 degrees. It feels like 23 in Richmond, and it feels like just 11 degrees in Beckley. So as we go throughout the afternoon, we're not going to go very far. You want to wear the layers as you head out this morning. Temperatures mainly in the teens around the Great Lakes, 10 degrees in Watertown. It's going to feel like 0, and 14 in Burlington. So this is the main story today, that northeast chill. But if we go to the middle of the country, we are 10 to 25 degrees above normal for this time of year. So 60 degrees today in Grand Isle, 53 in Denver, and 64 in Tulsa. That's 15 degrees above normal. Unfortunately, it's not going to last last very long. You see that jet stream dipping to the south. That's sort of like a door just opening, allowing this cold air from Canada to come in. So here comes the cold once again. Tomorrow, it's only going to be 1 degree in Bismarck. It's going to feel like 23. It's going to be 23 degrees below what is typical for this time of year. 5 degrees tomorrow in Minneapolis and 12 degrees in Madison. Now, that's all going to shift to the east. So once again, we're back into the deep freeze in Rochester Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're into the teens, and then finally 24 degrees on Saturday. But you know what? This cold air is going to set the stage for the potential for another nor'easter on Saturday. But let's talk temperatures. 35 Thursday in New York, 23 on Friday. Now, this is what we're looking at here today. We're looking at some snow along the upper Great Lakes. So that's going to be the major precipitation maker as we head throughout the day. So a Clipper system moves through. That's going to reinforce some cold air. Snow from North Dakota to Michigan. This is going to slide off to the north and east. But look what happens tomorrow. You have some snow in New England, but along that trailing cold front, you see some pink there. That's more freezing rain. You see some blue. That's some snow as well in parts of Kentucky, also Tennessee. But you also see a lot of rain and some heavy rain in places that already got a lot of rain the past month or two. So places in Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, you see those reds and yellows along the trailing, the last edge of this cold front. And we could possibly see some severe weather in those places, parts of Texas, into the Gulf Coast states. And that's what we're going to be watching on Wednesday. But for today, that chill does return to the northeast, a Clipper system in the northern plains, mild in the middle of the country, and then we're watching a few showers in the southwest. As we head towards tomorrow, we're going to see those strong storms that I told you about, that cold front, and again, could see the possibility for some really strong winds, maybe even a tornado isolated, but we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Arctic chill in the northern plains, lake effect snow once again, so more snow for Buffalo, Syracuse, places like that. And then, guys, I hate to show you this, but we are watching the potential for another storm come this weekend. It seems like every weekend we are seeing some sort of storm, but we have two solutions here that we look at. It's the American model, the GFS, showing that, yeah, we're probably not going to get a lot of snow along in New York City, Philadelphia, D.C. It looks like most of that snow stays off the coast and to the south. But I will end with this because the European model, which we look at often for snow, it looks like we could see a major snowstorm along the I-95 corridor with winds and, yeah, blustery conditions once again. So we're going to track this for you guys.
Big difference.
Look quite a bit different. Yeah.
I know, right?
We'll see who's right. All right.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle.
Coming up, emergency in the Pacific following a massive volcanic eruption.
Up next on Morning News Now, the latest from Tonga as we get our first look at the devastating aftermath, plus new fears that the death toll there could rise after the break. Welcome back. First responders are rushing to the island nation of Tonga following a massive volcanic eruption in the Pacific Ocean over the weekend.
Police told the New Zealand High Commission in Tonga that 2 people have died, but with communication severely disrupted, there are fears that number could rise. NBC News correspondent Matt Bradley has the latest.
Jaw-dropping images of an extraordinarily powerful and now deadly volcano erupting in the Pacific Ocean. This video, captured a day before an even larger eruption of the same underwater volcano, rocked the island nation of Tonga, triggering tsunami alerts across the globe. The scope of that eruption best seen from space. Satellite images showing a massive cloud of smoke spewing in all directions and as high as 12 miles in the air, the most powerful volcanic activity in at least 3 decades.
The tsunami advisory in effect.
Its stunning power felt across 5 continents, the entire west coast of the United States and Alaska under a tsunami alert for most of the weekend. In Peru, 2 people drowning after abnormally high waves slammed ashore. Ports from Japan to New Zealand littered with sunken fishing boats, the powerful waves tossing them like toys.
And they popped their heads out of their boat to see a red catamaran going over the top of my boat. So that is a force of nature there.
Shockwaves in Central Europe more than 10,000 miles away. The before and after images are staggering. The force of the blast nearly wiping this uninhabited island off the map. Australia and New Zealand now sending flights to survey the damage. The extent of the devastation still largely unknown. The eruption crippling Tonga's communications systems.
So the challenge is nobody is in contact with anybody on the island, and therefore we are all a bit in the dark about exactly the scale of damage or what people are experiencing.
The first victim in Tonga identified as 50-year-old Angela Glover from the UK. Her brother says she tragically lost her life while trying to rescue her dogs.
Oh, gosh. She's beautiful. She was absolutely a ray of sunshine. She loved her life there, and we were so proud of her achievements in such a short time in Tonga.
Tonga's Olympic flag bearer, who garnered international attention for marching in traditional Tongan attire, says his father is among the missing.
I want people to understand that there's a lot of Tongans around the world who are in the same situation and who are struggling. You know, something catastrophic has happened, and that, you know, we're going to be needing assistance.
Officials fear a massive disaster on the ground in Tonga and warning there could be aftershocks for days to come. Matt Bradley, NBC News.
Let's take a look at what else is making news around the world this morning.
Ali Arouzi joins us today from Tehran. Good morning, Ali.
Good morning, Savannah, Joe. Well, at least 22 people have been killed after back-to-back earthquakes struck the west of Afghanistan. According to data from the U.S. Geological Society, the 4.9 and 5.3 magnitude quakes shook the northwest province of Baghdad, one of the country's poorest regions, causing houses and buildings to collapse with significant damage because many of the dwellings weren't stable or well built. Britain's defense secretary says that the UK will supply Ukraine with short-range anti-tank missiles and send a small team of British troops to provide training for self-defense against increasingly threatening behavior from Russia. The first batch of light anti-armor weapons was sent on Monday, although the defense secretary didn't specify the type. And Sotheby's auction house has unveiled a diamond literally out of this world. The extremely rare 555-carat black diamond is believed to have come from outer space. It's currently on tour in Dubai and LA before it goes under the hammer in Sotheby's in London. They expect it to be sold for at least $6.8 million. I guess nothing quite says I love you like a 555-carat black diamond from outer space.
Yeah, and it may sound like a good investment till the aliens come back for it. And then you're going to wish you didn't have it.
Outer space, what? That's pretty cool. Thanks, Ali. And coming up, midterm elections now less than 10 months away. And the outcome could shift the balance of power in Congress. We'll have the latest on a high-stakes race shaping up in one battleground state.
Plus, cargo catastrophe, the cleanup and investigation now underway after a train derailment. And there's much more to the story. You're watching Morning News Now. Welcome back. On Betty White's 100th birthday yesterday, her assistant shared a heartfelt moment with the beloved star in her final days. Kirsten Mikolas posted this photo of White. It was taken back on December 20th. That's just 11 days before White passed away. The caption says she looked, quote, radiant and beautiful and as happy as ever. She certainly does look that there. It's one of the last known photos taken of the beloved actress. Since her death on New Year's Eve, White has received an outpouring of affection from friends, family, and fans across the world. Of course, yesterday we saw the Betty White Challenge. I don't even know if we'll ever get an idea of how much money was donated to all the various shelters around the country in honor of her.
Absolutely, because of her love for animals. Yes, so sweet. And that picture, how amazing.
It's beautiful.
It really is beautiful. And
so.
she does look so happy,
yes.
which I think is so good for people to see.
Everything we've heard is she was happy to the end.
Yes.
So.
Oh, so amazing. Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
Now to a high-stakes midterm race that could potentially decide which party controls the Senate. In battleground Pennsylvania, a state President Biden narrowly won in 2020. Several candidates are looking to grab the open Senate seat. The major contenders include a current congressman, the state's lieutenant governor, and a celebrity doctor. NBC News Now correspondent Dasha Burns joins us with a preview of this race from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Dasha, good morning. So let's start with the Republican candidates and with a name a lot of our viewers may recognize, Dr. Oz. Is his celebrity helping him out? How's he doing so far? And where does this crowded race for the primary stand right now on the Republican side?
Hey, Savannah, good morning. We are doing it again. We are talking elections. I'm in a battleground state. I'm having a little deja vu. Got a snowy morning here today in Pennsylvania. And look, it's still early, but the candidates are shaking hands. They're spending money. They are flooding the airwaves here in Pennsylvania with campaign ads. And there haven't been a lot of big tests yet. But over the weekend, we got an early indicator of where things stand when it comes to the GOP candidates with the Republican Central Caucus straw poll. Now, this is a group of local Republican leaders, of activists. These are the folks that are going out and getting voters to the polls. They're organizing. And the straw poll results were really interesting. You had Jeff Bartos, a real estate developer, coming in first. That was actually expected because he made a lot of these relationships when he was running for lieutenant governor. Second, you had Kathy Barnett. She's a conservative political commentator, a bit of an outsider, but she has been here on the ground really working it. Third, you have Dave McCormick, who is the newest candidate to enter the race. He was only about 2 days into his campaign, so the fact that he put up double digits already is showing that he has some inherent appeal, at least for the folks within the Republican Party sort of machinery here in Pennsylvania. Dr. Oz, though, got only one vote, which was really interesting to see because he is the big name. His ads are everywhere here in Pennsylvania. But in terms of the party itself in this state, seems like he's not yet being taken seriously, even though his name certainly is familiar to all the folks around here. Savannah.
Now, Dasha, these candidates are looking to replace Republican Senator Pat Toomey, who's retiring. But this seat could very well be a major get for Democrats. It would be if they were, in fact, to win it. So as we just mentioned, Biden did win the state. So tell us about the Democrats in this race and what are they doing to try to win this seat?
Yeah, look, Savannah, it really is a toss-up. It is a wide open field, and Democrats are claiming that they can get this done and that they will get this done. You've got Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, who's putting up some of the biggest fundraising dollars right now, and he does have a lot of name recognition in the state because of his position. He styles himself as a populist. The other big name you hear from a lot of folks and you see on TV a lot here is Connor Lamb. He is a congressman from the western part of Pennsylvania. Styles himself as a moderate. He has beaten a Republican before, so he says that's evidence of the fact that he can get this done. He's the only candidate who has won in a heavily Republican district. But then again, Fetterman did win a Democratic primary and a general election in Pennsylvania, so those are the two that are the sort of the biggest contenders, the biggest names in the race. You also have Valar Kushin, Representative Malcolm Kenyatta from Philadelphia. It's going to be really interesting to see. It's still early on, and it's anyone's game right now, Savannah.
It is still early, still 10-ish months, which means you've got a lot of time to spend there, my dear, but we are happy to have reporting from you. Thank you so much, Dasha. Good to see you.
A train derailment in Los Angeles is under investigation this morning. It's also shining a light on a major problem. You see, the train cars derailed near the same spot where thieves have been raiding cargo trains, stealing packages en route to customers. Officials say the situation is unprecedented. NBC News correspondent Gadi Schwartz explains.
A derailment of 17 train cars in Los Angeles Saturday, leaving crews to clean up the mess. The cause under investigation. The accident happened near the same section of tracks where thousands of empty boxes were left behind by cargo thieves. The ground still strewn with pilfered empty UPS, FedEx, and Amazon boxes. A spokeswoman for Union Pacific telling NBC News that crews cleaning up the debris from the thefts will work to return anything that can be identified to shippers. Thieves have been raiding the cargo containers aboard trains in Los Angeles for months. Just days before the train's derailment, cameras caught several people sorting through packages and stealing their contents.
We have really faced an unprecedented situation here in Los Angeles County in particular, where we have had about 160% increase in railroad theft that we have never encountered before.
A statement from Union Pacific on Sunday said the company has, quote, increased the number of special agents, drones, specialized fencing, and trespass detection systems. Union Pacific's agents have made hundreds of arrests, but less than half are booked, and of those, most are released in less than 24 hours. The company now asking the LA County District Attorney's Office for help in prosecuting thieves, saying the lack of consequences prevent Union Pacific from safely moving goods. In November, our NBC Los Angeles crews filmed people on the tracks. One hopped on a slow-moving train carrying what appeared to be bolt cutters.
Cargo thieves and organized cargo theft groups is that they will target commodities that they know that they can sell. So they're going to hone in on those commodities that are either high in demand or shortage and harder for people to get. That way they can get a better return on the sale of it after they steal it.
Union Pacific now considering changing rail operations, like avoiding LA County in the future if the level of cargo thefts continues to rise.
Thanks to Gadi Schwartz for that report.
And coming up, been feeling blue? Well, it's not just you.
Turns out yesterday was considered the saddest day of the year. It's sometimes called Blue Monday. We'll explain why for many it lasts much longer than just one day. That's next in our weekly check-in.
Welcome back. Now, both Pfizer and Moderna are currently working on an Omicron-specific vaccine. But as cases soar, what do we expect for this next generation of vaccines? NBC News medical reporter Erica Edwards spoke in depth with America's top scientist, Dr. Anthony Fauci, about boosters and developing a one-size-fits-all coronavirus vaccine for any future threat.
A vaccine that effectively tackles all forms of COVID, a pan-coronavirus vaccine, is being researched at hospitals around the country.
You don't have to worry that, well, now it's Delta, now it's Alpha, now it's Beta, now it's Omicron, that no matter how this particular virus mutates, you know that you have a vaccine that covers the common denominator that's common throughout all of those.
Currently, we have to boost to raise our protection against new variants.
Then all of a sudden, Omicron came along. And if you look at the efficacy against the Delta versus Omicron, it went down to around 30% from around 75, 80. So that when you give a boost to your vaccine, it brings it back up against Omicron. And that's the reason why you hear me and others saying why it's so important to get a booster.
A universal shot would eliminate the need for boosters or playing a game of whack-a-mole with future variants by having to develop variant-specific vaccines. The ultimate goal is to develop a vaccine that would protect against all coronaviruses.
What's the timeline for this kind of ultimate pan-coronavirus vaccine? Can we get one next year?
It's unlikely that we will get one next year for the entire family tree, if you want to call it that. But we can do pretty well within a year or so of getting one against all the different variants.
What Dr. Fauci means by family tree is the phylogenetic tree, which usually looks like this, or family of all the coronaviruses. The goal is to react quickly against future pandemics, but that could take some time.
Let's go back 2 years ago. We warp speeded you did warp speeded our way to an effective vaccine within 8-9 months.
Yeah, you know why?
Can we do the same thing to get to a pan-coronavirus vaccine?
Operation Warp Speed was not a scientific accomplishment. It was a production and clinical trial accomplishment.
The science for the vaccine was already in development for Operation Warp Speed. Scientists will have to research what parts of the virus won't mutate and what specific parts of the virus will trigger an immune response for the new pan-coronavirus vaccine. For now, this is what we can expect in the next few months.
There are two parallel pathways. Get boosters that work for what we're currently going through and develop a pan-coronavirus vaccine for any future threat of an unknown outbreak of a coronavirus.
All right, our thanks to Erica Edwards for that report and that great interview. And now it's time for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you.
Savannah Hanau joins us this morning. Good morning, Savannah.
Hey guys, good morning. Well, the CEOs of U.S. commercial and cargo airlines are warning of a potentially catastrophic crisis. They've sent a letter to the White House, FAA, FCC, and Department of Transportation. They say a new 5G wireless service set to be launched by AT&T and Verizon could make a significant number of wide-body jets unusable, causing chaos for flights. The FAA has warned potential interference could affect sensitive instruments. AT&T and Verizon have said they've launched the new service in several other countries with no issues. Apple's digital car key feature may be expanding to more vehicles. Bloomberg reports Hyundai and its upscale Genesis brand will support Apple Car Key by this summer. Some Hyundai cars already include technology to support a digital key. With Car Key, you just bring your iPhone or Apple Watch to the door handle to unlock it and place your phone in a given area to start the car. Currently, the option is only available on a handful of BMW models. And Walmart may be getting into the metaverse. The retail giant has made at least 3 filings with the U.S. Patent Office suggesting plans to expand into cryptocurrencies and other virtual experiences. That includes a Walmart-branded currency and a virtual reality game or online retail service with a marketplace of products authenticated by NFTs, such as home appliances, beauty products, and sporting goods. Guys, back to you.
We are going to have more on that later in the show so that we can start to respond with more knowledge when you bring us stories like that.
Crypto 101.
Yeah, good.
Please do that.
Okay, Savannah, thanks so much.
You got it, guys.
All right, and now it's time for our weekly mental health check-in. We're going to take a look at some of the biggest mental health headlines and studies, how they impact you, and use this as a moment to check in with ourselves.
Let's bring in Dr. Sue Varma to break this all down. First, Dr. Varma is a clinical assistant professor of psychiatry. Good to have you with us as always. So yesterday, as we teased, was the 3rd Monday of the year. It's also known as Blue Monday, which is considered the saddest day of the year. Many health experts say that it's because of seasonal affective disorder, which can extend well beyond Blue Monday, of course. That's important to remember. Remind us, what is seasonal affective disorder, and how do we know if we have it, and what's the best way to treat it?
Absolutely. So thank you for having me and having this discussion. So seasonal affective disorder is a type of winter depression that maybe 5% of people have. But more people have the more common version, which is the winter blues, 15 to 20%. And it's having low energy, not having interest in the things that we once used to have, changes in appetite, changes in sleep, social withdrawal. We find that people are eating too much, particularly carb craving, chocolate, sleeping too much, feeling like their body is heavy, and wanting to isolate.
Now, I want to ask you about supermodel Bella Hadid. So she opened up about her mental health struggles in this new interview, in this article in the Wall Street Journal. So she references pain and anxiety, and she also opens up about posting this series of intimate Instagram posts of her crying back in November. I want to ask you, what do you think the impact of someone like her? I mean, someone who people might look at and think, you know, she has it all, or it seems like things would be going well for her, coming out and opening up in this way. What can that impact be, and what can we learn from her candidness on social media?
Absolutely. So, I want to say that when it comes to depression and anxiety, it doesn't discriminate, right? So it doesn't matter how wealthy you are, how much of a celebrity you are, how much you have. And I think it really drives home the point how much mental health issues are medical disorders, and they really don't have a lot to do with your circumstances. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, there can be losses, and it could be a death, or there could be a trauma that you've experienced in your life, or situational things that may predispose you or might trigger a depression or anxiety. But you could be someone who, quote, seems to have it all. Yeah. And depression and anxiety are real medical conditions. So I think that this is sort of like normalizing it. It streamlines it. It mainstreams it, and it says that all of us can get affected by this. And so it reduces the stigma. And I love that she and other celebrities are really open about this, so that it normalizes and says, well, you know what? I look up to her, and if she can talk about it and if she can get help, I want to do the same thing.
So important.
Here's an interesting one. A new study suggests skateboarding could be beneficial for the mental health of middle-aged adults. Help us understand this. We're tight on time here, but explain this one for us.
Yes. So first of all, this was a very small study. It was only 30 people. But what we need to keep in mind is that there were key things. Social connection through skateboarding, and really it could be any form of exercise. A sense of mastery. I talk about the 4 M's, meaningful connection, a sense of mastery, mindfulness, because you really have to be in the moment when you're doing this, and movement, right? The exercise, the endorphin. So while this is about skateboarding, really there's just that get out, get active in your community, connect with other people, and learn something new.
Watch out for all those middle-aged skate parks popping up.
Yeah, it also requires, though, you to be able to get on without injuring yourself, which I cannot do, that's for sure. All right, Dr. Sue Varman, thank you so much. Wonderful to have you with us. We love this segment. Now, if you or anyone you know is struggling, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. There it is on your screen, 800-273-8255, or text TALK to 741-741. Coming up, honoring a hero. One of the last surviving Tuskegee Airmen has passed away. A look back at his life and how he was able to inspire others.
Plus, emergency in the ocean, climate change being blamed for the deaths of hundreds of manatees. The race now to rescue the majestic marine mammal. That's next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. Tributes are being paid to Charles McGee, one of the last surviving Tuskegee Airmen. He died Sunday at the age of 102.
McGee was a pioneer in the Air Force, recording one of the highest numbers of combat missions in service history. Along the way, he inspired the next generation of aviators with his determination and courage. Here's nightly news anchor Lester Holt with more on McGee's life and legacy.
He served in 3 wars, an American hero who soared past barriers, leading the way for generations to come. Charles McGee was a fighter pilot with the legendary Tuskegee Airmen, the all-black unit that broke racial barriers in the military, fighting for their country and for their country's respect. He amassed more than 400 career combat missions in World War II and later in Korea and Vietnam.
After my first flight, I was hooked. I loved flying.
McGee died on Sunday at 102 years old. Vice President Kamala Harris calling him an American hero. Secretary of Defense Lloyd J. Austin III writing, "I'm also incredibly grateful for his sacrifice, his legacy, and his character." I spoke with McGee in 2020, soon after he was awarded the rank of Brigadier General by President Trump.
General McGee, our nation salutes you. Thank you, sir.
Has life changed a lot now that you are general?
A lot to be thankful for. Because of that.
What are your most vivid memories of being a Tuskegee Airman at war?
Although we didn't change segregation, we provided a background that gave our Air Force the opportunity, when the air and ground portions separated, to bring about equal access and equal opportunity for all.
His message to young Americans.
And the knowledge to know that they can achieve if they believe in it themselves, and don't let others tell them that they can't do something.
Charles McGee. His family called him a living legend who saw positivity at every turn.
Lester Holt, thank you so much for that report. Now, in Florida this morning, the race is on to rescue the manatee.
The gentle marine mammals are struggling to survive as cold temperatures drive them to warmer waters where there's no food for them to eat. NBC News correspondent Kerry Sanders went inside a hospital caring for manatees, been left on the brink of starvation. He joins us now. Kerry, good morning.
Well, good morning. You know, it's an exciting morning. I'm at Blue Springs State Park. This is freshwater behind me. And just a few moments ago, one of those rescued manatees that had been plumped back up, fed properly, 845 pounds, was released. Now, the problem is the food is really void off the coast of Florida. The manatee can swim in freshwater like they do here, but also in saltwater. And in the saltwater, for about 80 miles off the coast, there's a lack of food, and the manatees are in crisis.
This morning, manatees, the gentle giants with no predators, not even sharks or alligators, in an unprecedented fight to survive. In the last 12 months, a record 1,100 plus manatees have died, most from starvation.
These animals aren't down 100 pounds. They're not down 200 pounds. We're talking being down 800-900 pounds, half to 3/4 of your body weight gone. They're skeletons.
Orlando SeaWorld, with the largest manatee hospital in the world, had 36 patients and was at capacity. But over the weekend, with the help of shipping giant DHL, teams flew 4 manatee calves from Orlando to the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. The delicate weekend journey needed to make room at SeaWorld's hospital because increasingly in the wild, more and more of these gentle giants are in a life and death struggle.
But for all the heartbreaking losses, those that are rescued are likely to survive, like the newest arrivals in Ohio, nicknamed Cardi T, Lizzo, Mary Kate, and Ashley.
The Columbus Zoo and Aquarium was more than happy to help out.
The unprecedented manatee death rate off the Atlantic coast, a result of fertilizer runoff from farms and lawns, as well as leaky septic tanks. Combined, the nutrient-rich water becomes supercharged, causing algae blooms, the thick gunk preventing the sun rays from reaching the ocean seabed, where seagrasses grow. A big manatee eats up to 300 pounds of seagrass a day.
There's no seagrass for a 70, 80-mile stretch.
So is it like a desert down there?
It's a desert underwater. There's no food, there's nothing there.
In the manatee hospital, lettuce is the #1 choice to build their weight back up. But in the wild, the feedings like this have failed.
We continue to adapt. We are confident at some point we'll find a trigger that works.
And one of the things that the state is looking at doing is seeing if they can actually plant seagrasses. But of course, that's not easy. It doesn't happen quickly. Right now, the manatee is an endangered species. It's down to about 6,000 left. And so they're very concerned about what's going on right now. But again, some good news today. At least one manatee released here. There's a herd up around the corner here. And so that herd now, if it had 400, now has 401. So that's some good news, guys.
Very good.
And maybe a Lizzo or a Mary Kate or Ashley.
Right. Those are some great names, too. Carrie, thank you so much for that important report. We do appreciate it.
Thank you. Sure.
That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.